Why is she wiping tables here? Eli Monroe's voice trembled, barely a whisper, as his eyes locked onto Skylar West, his pregnant ex-wife, moving through the glittering chaos of his wedding reception. 6 months had passed since their bitter divorce, a wound still raw, and now her swollen belly, undeniable, mysterious, stirred a storm in his chest. The billionaire's world of crystal chandeliers and power plays froze, replaced by questions. Whose child was it? Why was she here, in his orbit, at this pivotal moment? Was fate weaving their paths together again, or was this a fleeting, cruel reunion? The answers lie in a tale of love, betrayal, and redemption that will grip your heart. Hey, if this story pulls you in, hit that subscribe button and share where you're listening from, what time it is, and your wildest guess about where this is headed. Will Eli and Skylar find their way back, or is this the end? Stick around. Every twist will leave you breathless. The Peninsula Hotel in Chicago shimmered under a cascade of crystal chandeliers, their prisms scattering light across a ballroom alive with the city's elite. Laughter mingled with the clink of champagne flutes, a string quartet weaving melodies through the air. Eli Monroe, 32, stood at the heart of his wedding reception, his tailored tuxedo framing a commanding presence. Beside him, Amelia Hart, 28, glowed in a sleek ivory gown, her sharp smile cutting through the crowd. To the world, they were the epitome of power and glamour, a billionaire tech mogul and his ambitious lawyer bride. But beneath the polished facade, Eli's chest tightened, a hollow ache he couldn't name. He scanned the room, nodding at a senator's toast, when his gaze snagged on a figure near the edge of the ballroom. A woman, pregnant, her belly unmistakable beneath a plain black uniform, wiped a table with quiet precision. Her movements were deliberate, almost graceful, despite the weight she carried. Eli's breath caught. The light shifted, illuminating her face, and his world tilted. Skylar West, his ex-wife. 6 months after their divorce, a jagged scar of shouted words and slammed doors. She was here, in his orbit, working at his wedding. Skylar! The name slipped out, a low murmur lost in the crowd's hum. His heart pounded, a drumbeat of shock and something deeper. Guilt, perhaps, or longing. She hadn't seen him, her focus on the table, her dark curls pinned neatly back. Eli's mind raced. Why was she here, wiping tables? And the child? Whose was it? The questions clawed at him, each one sharper than the last. He stepped forward, drawn like a moth to a flame, but Amelia's hand grazed his arm. Darling, the mayor's asking for you, she said, her voice honeyed but edged, her green eyes flicking to where his gaze lingered. Eli forced a smile, murmuring, "One moment," and slipped away, weaving through the crowd. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor, each step heavier than the last. Skylar straightened, tucking a cloth into her apron, and turned. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the room vanished. Her brown eyes, once so warm, now held a guarded chill. She froze, her hands tightening around a tray, her lips parting in a silent gasp. Eli, she said, her voice low, clipped. I'm working. Working? His tone betrayed his disbelief, his eyes dropping to her belly, then back to her face. Skylar, what? Why are you here? And... He gestured vaguely, words failing him. The baby? Her jaw tightened, a flicker of pain crossing her face before she masked it. This isn't the place, she said, turning to leave, her movements brisk despite her pregnancy. Eli reached out instinctively, his hand hovering, not daring to touch her. Skylar, please. I need to know. She stopped, her back to him, shoulders rigid. You don't get to need anything from me anymore, she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. Then she walked away, disappearing into the sea of servers, leaving Eli rooted to the spot, his heart a tangled mess of regret and confusion. Amelia materialized beside him, her perfume sharp. Who was that? She asked, her tone too casual, her eyes narrowing as they followed Skylar's retreating figure. Eli swallowed, forcing his voice to steady. An old friend, he lied, the words tasting bitter. Amelia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Really? She seemed familiar. She linked her arm through his, pulling him back toward the center of the reception. Our guests are waiting. Eli let her lead him, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the moment Skylar's eyes met his. He saw her again in flashes, college nights under starlit skies, her laughter filling their tiny apartment, her unwavering belief in his dreams. They'd built a life from nothing. Skylar working long hours at a financial firm while he poured everything into his startup. Their wedding 4 years ago had been simple, just them and a handful of friends in a park, her white dress glowing in the dusk. But success had changed him, hadn't it? Late nights, endless meetings, the siren call of wealth and status. Skylar had faded into the background, her pleas for time together drowned out by his ambition. Now she was here, pregnant, working a job he'd assumed beneath her. The Skylar he knew was brilliant, a financial analyst with a sharp mind and sharper wit. Had their divorce left her so desperate? The thought twisted like a knife. And the baby, 6 months since their split. The math gnawed at him, a possibility he couldn't voice. He forced himself to smile for a photo, Amelia's hand tight on his elbow. The crowd blurred, their congratulations a distant hum. He caught sight of Skylar again, clearing plates at a far table, her face unreadable. She moved with purpose, but there was a weariness in her posture, a weight beyond the physical. Eli's chest ached. He'd failed her once, hadn't he? The arguments, the silences, the night she'd walked out, her suitcase in hand, his pride too stubborn to stop her. Amelia leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "You're distracted," she said, a warning in her tone. Eli nodded absently, his eyes still on Skylar. "Just tired," he murmured. She followed his gaze, her lips thinning, but she said nothing, her grip tightening. As the night wore on, Eli stole moments to watch Skylar, each glimpse fueling his resolve. He needed answers, not just about the baby, but about her life, her pain, the choices that had led them here. The reception was a glittering cage, trapping him in pleasantries while his past stood mere feet away, carrying a secret that could unravel everything. He slipped away to a quiet corner, pulling out his phone. A quick text to his assistant. "Find out everything about Skylar West, now." He hesitated, then added, discreetly. Pocketing the phone, he returned to the crowd, Amelia's laughter ringing out as she charmed a tech investor. But Eli's focus was elsewhere, drawn to the woman who'd once been his everything, now a stranger in his world. Skylar, unaware of his scrutiny, paused in a shadowed alcove, her hand resting on her belly. She closed her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath, as if steeling herself against an unseen storm. To her, this was just another job, another night to survive. But for Eli, it was the beginning of something unstoppable, a collision of past and present, love and regret, that would either mend their broken bond or shatter it forever. The ghost of Skylar's words, "You don't get to need anything from me anymore," haunted Eli as he stood in his penthouse office, the Chicago skyline sprawling beyond the glass. A week had passed since the wedding, but the image of her, pregnant and defiant, burned in his mind. He should have been basking in the glow of his new life with Amelia. Yet his thoughts circled back to Skylar, to the life they'd lost, and the child that might be his. His phone buzzed, a message from his assistant. "Report on Skylar West ready." Eli's pulse quickened. He needed to know, even if the truth cut deeper than he feared. He sank into his leather chair, opening the file. Skylar wasn't destitute. She was a senior event manager at Pinnacle Events, a top-tier firm, pulling 6 figures and living in a sleek Lincoln Park condo. Eli's brow furrowed. Why, then, was she wiping tables at his wedding? The report mentioned her efficiency, her reputation for perfectionism, but offered no answers about the baby. His fingers tightened around the phone, memories flooding back. Skylar's laughter in their college dorm, her hands steadying him through sleepless nights of coding his first app. They'd been a team, dreaming of a future they'd carved together. Northwestern's campus flashed in his mind, where Skylar, with her quick wit and fierce ambition, had challenged him in economics class. She'd worked double shifts to fund his startup while he pitched to investors. Their wedding 4 years ago was a quiet affair in Grant Park, her smile brighter than the summer sun. But as his company soared, Eli had changed. Late nights turned into weeks abroad, his world consumed by boardrooms and galas. Skylar, meanwhile, juggled her own career and a desperate wish for a child, her hopes dashed by failed treatments and his absence. Their fights grew bitter, her accusing him of abandoning their dreams, him snapping that she didn't understand his pressures. The final blow came one stormy night, Skylar's voice breaking. "You're not the man I married." She'd left, and he'd let her go, too proud to chase her. Now Eli stood, pacing. The report hinted at a truth he'd misjudged. He needed to see her to understand. Grabbing his coat, he headed to a corporate gala Pinnacle was hosting downtown, where Skylar was overseeing operations. The venue buzzed with executives and influencers, a stark contrast to the wedding's opulence. Skylar moved through the crowd, clipboard in hand, her black blazer tailored over her pregnancy. She directed staff with calm authority, her voice cutting through the din. "Table 5 needs resetting now." Eli watched, struck by her command, so different from the weary server he'd assumed her to be. He approached, heart pounding. "Skylar," he said, his voice softer than intended. She turned, her eyes narrowing, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "Eli, what are you doing here?" Her tone was professional, distant, as if he were just another client. "I needed to see you," he said, stepping closer. "I know you're not struggling. You're managing this place. So why were you wiping tables at my wedding?" Skylar's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not here," she said, glancing at the crowd. She led him to a quiet corner near the bar, her posture rigid. "I was covering for a staff member who slacked off. I disciplined them after. That's my job, fixing mistakes. Not that it's your business." Eli exhaled, relief mingling with shame. I thought you were in trouble. After everything, You thought I'd fallen apart without you." Her voice was sharp, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of hurt. "I've built my life, Eli. I don't need your pity." He swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. "The baby," he said, voice low. "Is it?" He couldn't finish the question because it was too heavy. Skylar's gaze hardened. "This isn't the time or place," she said, turning to leave. Eli grabbed her wrist gently, then released it as she stiffened. "Please, Skylar, I'm not the same man who let you walk away." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "Maybe not, but that doesn't change what happened." She walked back to her team, leaving Eli in the shadows, his chest tight with regret. Back at his penthouse, Eli pored over the report again, piecing together fragments of Skylar's life. She'd thrived without him, yet the baby, 6 months along, kept him awake. Had she known before their divorce? Why hadn't she told him? His phone lit up with a call from Amelia, her voice crisp. "You were out late. Everything okay?" "Fine," he lied, his eyes on a photo of Skylar from the report, taken at a charity event, her smile radiant but guarded. Amelia's tone shifted, probing. "You've been distracted since the wedding. That woman, she's not just a friend, is she?" Eli's jaw clenched. "It's nothing," he said, ending the call. But it was everything. Skylar wasn't just his past. She was a mirror to his failures, a reminder of the man he'd lost. He needed to know more, not just about the baby, but about the woman she'd become. The next day, another report arrived. Skylar had disciplined a staff member for abandoning their post at the wedding, confirming her story. Eli's shame deepened. He'd judged her, assumed the worst when she'd been in control all along. He pictured her in that ballroom, pregnant and unbowed, a force he'd underestimated. His fingers hovered over his phone, tempted to call her, but he stopped. She'd made it clear he had no claim to her life. Yet as he stared at the city lights, Eli felt a pull stronger than pride. Skylar wasn't just a memory, she was a reckoning. He'd failed her once, but the sight of her, carrying a child that might be his, ignited something he thought he'd buried. Love, perhaps, or duty. Whatever it was, it drove him to act. He texted his assistant, "Find out where Skylar's next event is. I need to be there." As he set the phone down, Eli's gaze lingered on the skyline, where Skylar was out there, building a life without him. But fate had brought them together once, in a crowded ballroom, and he couldn't shake the feeling it wasn't done with them yet. Whether she'd let him in or shut him out, Eli was ready to fight for answers. And maybe, just maybe, for a chance to make things right. The sting of Skylar's words, "I don't need your pity," clung to Eli like a shadow as he stood outside Pinnacle Events' sleek office in downtown Chicago. The late morning sun glinted off the glass facade, but his focus was inward, replaying their tense exchange at the gala. Skylar wasn't the broken figure he'd imagined. She was a force, commanding her world with a strength he'd failed to see in their marriage. Yet the unanswered question of her baby, his baby, gnawed at him, a tether pulling him toward her despite her walls. He adjusted his tie, feigning confidence, and stepped inside, determined to uncover the truth. The office hummed with activity, staff bustling between mood boards and laptops. Skylar stood at a conference table, her voice clear as she briefed her team on a tech conference. Her black dress hugged her pregnant frame, her authority undeniable. Eli lingered by the reception desk, posing as a prospective client, his heart racing as he watched her. She was magnetic, her gestures precise, her smile professional but guarded. How had he let her slip away? "Mr. Monroe?" A receptionist's voice snapped him back. "Ms. West will see you shortly." Eli nodded, his cover story, a fake inquiry about event planning, feeling flimsier by the second. When Skylar glanced his way, her eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition giving way to irritation. She excused herself from the meeting and approached, her steps measured. "Eli, this is my workplace," she said, her tone low but sharp. "What game are you playing?" "No game," he said, raising his hands. I needed to understand. You at the wedding, wiping tables, it didn't add up. I know you're in charge here, but why were you doing that?" Skylar's jaw tightened, her arms crossing over her belly. "You've been digging into my life, haven't you?" She didn't wait for an answer, her voice dropping. "I covered for a staff member who left their post. I disciplined them after. It's called leadership, Eli, not desperation. Now, if you're done playing detective, I have work to do." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Skylar, I'm not here to judge. I thought you were struggling, and I felt—" He stopped, the word guilty catching in his throat. "The baby, I need to know. Is it mine?" Her eyes flashed, a storm of emotions, anger, pain, resolve, crossing her face. She glanced at the curious staff nearby and pulled him into a glass-walled office, closing the door. "You don't get to waltz in and demand answers," she said, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "Not after you chose your empire over us. This is my life now, and I've built it without you." Eli's chest tightened, her words slicing through his defenses. "I know I failed you," he said, his voice raw. "I was blind, Skylar. But seeing you, like this—" He gestured to her belly, his throat constricting. "If that's my child, I have a right to know." She laughed, a bitter sound. "A right? You lost that when you stopped showing up for me." She turned away, her hand resting on the desk, her breathing uneven. "I'm not doing this here. Leave, Eli, please." He wanted to push, to beg, but the steel in her eyes stopped him. "I'm not giving up," he said softly. "Not this time." He left, her silence heavier than any rebuke. Back in his car, Eli gripped the steering wheel, his mind a tangle of regret and determination. Skylar wasn't just the woman he'd loved. She was a mirror to his mistakes, her strength a rebuke to his past arrogance. He'd hired a private investigator, a move he now saw as invasive, but it had revealed her truth. She was thriving, independent, unbroken. Yet the baby haunted him. 6 months since their divorce, the timing is too close to dismiss. Had she hidden it to punish him or to protect herself? Meanwhile, Skylar leaned against her office door, her composure cracking. Eli's presence had reopened wounds she'd fought to heal, the nights she'd cried alone, the doctor's call confirming her pregnancy days after their split. She'd chosen to keep it, to raise her child in a world she controlled, not one tethered to a man who'd forgotten her. But seeing him, his eyes pleading, stirred a flicker of doubt. Was she denying her child a father out of pride? Her phone buzzed, a text from her friend Maya. "Heard about the drama. You okay?" Skylar exhaled, typing back, "I'll survive. Always do." But survival wasn't enough anymore. She touched her belly, whispering, "We're enough, right?" The baby kicked, a small reassurance, but Eli's words lingered. "I'm not giving up." Across town, Amelia sat in their penthouse, scrolling through photos from the gala, her sharp eyes catching Eli's exchange with Skylar. She'd sensed his distraction since the wedding, his excuses too vague. A contact in the industry had mentioned Skylar's name, and Amelia's instincts screamed threat. She dialed a private investigator, her voice cold. "I need everything on Skylar West. Her job, her life, her condition." She hung up, her smile tight. Eli was hers, and no ghost from his past would change that. Eli, unaware of Amelia's moves, drove to his next meeting, but his mind was elsewhere. Skylar's defiance, her strength, only deepened his need to make amends. He remembered their last fight, her tear-streaked face as she'd said, "You don't even see me anymore." He hadn't, not then. But now he couldn't look away. That evening, Skylar stood in her condo, staring at an old photo from their wedding, tucked in a box of memories. Eli's arm around her, both of them laughing, felt like another lifetime. She'd been so sure of their love, so willing to fight for it. Now she fought for herself, for her child. But Eli's persistence, his raw plea, cracked her armor. She didn't trust him, not yet. But the man she'd seen today wasn't the cold tycoon who'd let her go. Her phone lit up with an email from a client, praising her latest event. Skylar smiled, grounding herself in her success. Eli could chase answers, but she held the power now. Still, as she turned off the light, a question lingered. Could she keep him at arm's length forever? Or would fate, relentless and cruel, draw them back together? Eli, in his office, opened a new report. Skylar's next event, a charity auction. He marked his calendar, a plan forming. He'd respect her boundaries, but he wouldn't disappear. Not again. The city lights flickered outside, a silent witness to the collision course they were on. A dance of past promises and future hopes, with a child's life at its heart. Skylar's rebuke, "You lost that right when you stopped showing up," echoed in Eli's mind as he sat in the dim glow of a Chicago cafe, the scent of roasted coffee grounding him against the storm within. A week had passed since their confrontation in her office, and her words had carved a hollow in his chest, exposing the truth of his failures. He'd invaded her world, demanding answers she owed him no longer. Yet the possibility of her child being his drove him to this meeting. Across the table, Skylar sat, her hands cradling a mug of chamomile tea, her brown eyes wary but resolute. The cafe's soft jazz couldn't mask the tension between them, a chasm of broken promises and unspoken truths. "You've got 5 minutes," Skylar said, her voice steady, though her fingers tightened around the mug. "Say what you need to, then leave me be." Eli leaned forward, his tailored jacket feeling like armor he didn't deserve. "I'm sorry," he began, the words raw, "for showing up at your office, for hiring someone to dig into your life. It was wrong. But Skylar, I can't walk away. Not when I saw you, pregnant, at my wedding. I need to know about the baby." Her gaze flickered, a flash of vulnerability quickly buried. "You don't get to demand that," she said, her tone icy. "Not after everything. You want the truth? Fine. The baby's yours. But that doesn't mean you get a say in my life." The confirmation hit like a punch, stealing his breath. His child. 6 months ago, he'd signed divorce papers, blind to the life she carried. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice cracking. Before it ended." Skylar's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Tell you? When, Eli? When you were jetting off to Singapore for another deal? Or when you stopped coming home?" She leaned back, her hand resting on her belly, protective. "I found out the day after I left. I was alone, staring at a test in a hotel bathroom while you were building your empire. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you back out of pity or duty. I wanted this child for me." Eli's throat burned, her words painting a vivid picture of her solitude, his absence. He remembered those final months, her pleading for time together, him dismissing her as clingy, her dream of a family met with his impatience. "I was a fool," he said, meeting her gaze. I let ambition blind me. I didn't see you, Skylar, not the way you deserved. But I'm here now, and I want to be there. For you, for our child. She shook her head, a tear escaping despite her resolve. You don't get to rewrite the past with an apology. I spent years waiting for you to show up, Eli. I won't beg for it again. She wiped her cheek, her voice firm. I've built a life, my career, my home, my strength. This baby is mine, and I'll protect it from chaos, including you. He nodded, swallowing the urge to argue. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I'm not walking away. Not from my child. Not from you if you'll let me try. His eyes pleaded, searching hers for a crack in her armor. Skylar's expression softened, just for a moment, before hardening again. Trying isn't enough, she said. You broke us, Eli. Words don't fix that. She stood, gathering her scarf. Don't follow me. Don't dig into my life. If I want you to know something, I'll tell you. She walked out, her silhouette fading into the bustling street, leaving Eli with the weight of her truth. His child, a life he'd nearly missed, tied him to her in a way he couldn't ignore. But her pain, her independence, was a wall he didn't know how to scale. He stared at the empty chair, replaying their marriage's collapse. Her tearful pleas for a baby, his cold insistence that they weren't ready, her quiet despair as he prioritized boardrooms over their home. He'd failed her, and now she stood stronger without him. Across town, Amelia sat in a sleek cafe, her manicured nails tapping her phone. She'd planted a discreet listening device in Eli's jacket, a desperate move born of suspicion, and now she listened to his conversation with Skylar through an earpiece. The words, "The baby's yours," sent ice through her veins. Her husband, her perfect match, was tethered to another woman, a woman whose strength and history threatened everything. Amelia's lips curled, her mind racing. Skylar West was no longer just a ghost. She was a rival, and Amelia played to win. She texted a contact, her message curt. Spread the rumor. Skylar West crashed Eli's wedding for attention. Make it stick. If Skylar's reputation faltered, Eli's obsession might fade. Amelia sipped her latte, her smile calculated. She'd fought too hard to claim Eli, his wealth, his status, to let a pregnant ex-wife unravel her victory. Skylar, unaware of the brewing storm, drove home, her hands trembling on the wheel. Eli's apology had stirred memories she'd buried. Their first dance at their wedding, his whispered promises of forever. But those promises had crumbled under his ambition, leaving her to rebuild alone. She parked outside her condo, touching her belly as the baby kicked. We don't need him, she murmured, but the lie tasted hollow. Her child deserved a father, but could she trust Eli not to break them again? Inside, she sank onto her couch, staring at a framed photo of her team at Pinnacle events. Her life was hers, hard-won, vibrant. But Eli's return threatened that stability. His eyes, raw with regret, had pierced her defenses, reminding her of the man she'd loved. She shook her head, forcing the thought away. Love had burned her once. She wouldn't fall again. Eli, still in the cafe, paid the bill, his mind a battlefield. Skylar's strength, her refusal to bend, only deepened his need to prove himself. He'd lost her to his own arrogance, but this child, their child, was a second chance he wouldn't squander. He stepped outside, the city's pulse matching his own. Skylar could push him away, but he'd show her he'd changed, not with words but with actions. Unseen, Amelia's plan took root, the rumor already whispering through Chicago's elite circles. Skylar's world, so carefully built, was about to face a test, and Eli, driven by a love he'd thought dead, was stepping into a fight he didn't yet understand. The cafe's door swung shut behind him, the city stretching out like a chessboard where every move would count. The weight of Skylar's parting words, "Don't follow me," pressed against Eli as he navigated the glass-walled corridors of his tech empire. But her revelation about their child burned brighter, a beacon pulling him toward redemption. A month had slipped by since their cafe confrontation, and though Skylar's resolve held firm, Eli clung to the hope that persistence could crack her defenses. Chicago's late summer hummed outside, but his focus was elsewhere, on Skylar. on their unborn son, on the man he needed to become. His phone vibrated, a notification from his assistant. Skylar West, overseeing event at Art Institute tonight. Eli's jaw tightened. He'd find a way to show her he was more than his past mistakes. At the Art Institute, Skylar moved through a sea of gala guests, her tablet glowing as she coordinated staff with seamless precision. Her navy dress hugged her 8th-month pregnancy, her curls swept into an elegant updo. She radiated control, but beneath her poise, exhaustion lingered. Late nights and the baby's kicks stealing her rest. She hadn't seen Eli since the cafe, but his absence felt louder than his presence, a reminder of the chaos he could bring. She pushed the thought aside, directing a server. Champagne to table 3 now. Unbeknownst to her, a venomous rumor had taken root, seeded by Amelia's calculated spite. Whispers rippled through Chicago's elite. Skylar West crashed Eli Monroe's wedding to extort him. The gossip reached Pinnacle Events clients, sowing doubt. Skylar caught a client's sidelong glance, her stomach twisting. Her friend Maya texted during a break. Saw a nasty blog post about you. What's going on? Skylar's fingers trembled as she opened the link, her heart sinking at the headline. Event planner's desperate ploy at billionaire's wedding. Lies twisted to paint her as a schemer. She exhaled, forcing calm. She'd faced worse. She'd survived this. Eli, arriving at the gala in a tailored blazer, scanned the room for Skylar. He'd seen the blog post that morning, rage flaring at the slander. He'd confronted Amelia, her denial too polished, her eyes betraying guilt. I'd never hurt someone like that, she'd said, but Eli wasn't fooled. He'd hired a cybersecurity expert to trace the rumor, determined to shield Skylar from the fallout. Spotting her near a floral display, he approached, his voice low. Skylar, we need to talk. She turned, her expression hardening. Eli, I told you to stay away. Her eyes darted to the crowd, wary of attention. What now? I saw the rumors, he said, stepping closer. They're lies, and I'm handling it. I've got people tracking the source, and I'm meeting with the blog's editor tomorrow to demand a retraction. He pulled out his phone, showing her an email draft to a client, defending her reputation. You don't deserve this. Skylar's brows lifted, surprise flickering before she masked it. You think a few emails fix this? She said, her voice sharp. This is my career, Eli. My life. You being here only makes it worse. She paused, softening slightly. But, thank you for trying. Eli nodded, sensing her walls waver. I'm not just trying, he said. I'm in this, Skylar. For you, for our son. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'll earn it. His eyes held hers, raw with conviction. She looked away, her hand grazing her belly. Don't make promises you can't keep, she murmured, then walked back to her team, leaving Eli with a spark of hope. Her thank you was small, but it was a crack in her armor, a chance he'd seize. At home, Amelia paced her penthouse, her phone buzzing with updates from her contact. The rumor was spreading, but Eli's interference threatened her plan. She'd underestimated his loyalty to Skylar, a mistake she wouldn't repeat. She opened her laptop, drafting an anonymous email to Skylar. Back off, Eli, or your secrets go public. Her finger hovered over send, a cruel smile curling her lips. Skylar's strength was her weapon, but Amelia knew how to wield fear. Skylar, finishing the gala, collapsed into a chair, her feet aching. The rumor's sting lingered, but Eli's unexpected defense had stirred something. Gratitude, perhaps, or a dangerous flicker of the love she'd buried. She opened her email, freezing at the anonymous threat. Her pulse raced, but she deleted it, refusing to cower. No one scares me, she whispered, her hand on her belly. Not for you, Noah. The next day, Eli met with his cybersecurity expert, who confirmed the blog post originated from a shell account linked to Amelia's assistant. Fury surged, but he kept it leashed, gathering evidence for a confrontation. He visited Skylar's condo unannounced, carrying a folder of documents, client testimonials he'd collected to counter the rumors. She opened the door, surprise softening her guarded stance. Eli, what's this? Proof you're untouchable, he said, handing her the folder. I've got your back, Skylar, always will. His voice was steady, but his eyes pleaded for a chance. She skimmed the papers, her throat tightening. You didn't have to do this, she said, her voice softer. But it means something. She hesitated, then added, don't think this changes everything. I know, he said, a faint smile breaking through. But it's a start. He left, her words echoing. It means something. It was enough. For now. Skylar closed the door, the folder heavy in her hands. Eli's persistence was dismantling her defenses, brick by brick. She remembered their college nights, dreaming of a family, and the pain of his absence when those dreams crumbled. Yet here he was, fighting for her, for Noah. She wasn't ready to forgive, but the ice around her heart was thawing, and that scared her more than any rumor. Amelia, reading a report from her investigator, learned Skylar had ignored her threat. Her smile faded, replaced by cold resolve. She'd escalate, dig deeper, hit harder. Skylar's strength was formidable, but Amelia thrived on destruction. She typed a new message, this time to a tabloid. Billionaire's ex hides explosive secret. The game was far from over. Eli, driving through the city, felt a shift. Skylar's guarded gratitude was a lifeline, a sign he could rebuild what he'd broken. He didn't know Amelia's next move, but he sensed the storm brewing. For Skylar, for their son, he'd face it head-on, proving with every step that he was no longer the man who'd let her go. The city lights blurred past, a silent promise that this fight was just beginning. Eli's small victory, Skylar's quiet. It means something, fueled his resolve as he sat in a community center classroom, scribbling notes on newborn care. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a far cry from his boardroom empire. But here, learning to be a father, he felt closer to Skylar than he had in years. Her guarded gratitude from their last encounter lingered like a promise, fragile but real. Outside, Chicago's autumn chill crept in, but Eli's focus was on proving he could be the man she and their son deserved, one deliberate step at a time. Skylar, meanwhile, stood in her Lincoln Park condo, folding tiny onesies on her couch, the soft hum of jazz easing her eighth-month fatigue. Eli's efforts, defending her reputation, gathering client testimonials, had softened her defenses, but trust remained a distant shore. The anonymous email she deleted still gnawed at her, a shadow she refused to let darken her world. She touched her belly, whispering, Noah, we've got this. But Eli's persistence, his raw sincerity, stirred questions. Could he truly change, or was this another fleeting promise? Unseen, Eli's quiet campaign to support Skylar gained traction. He'd funneled an anonymous donation to Pinnacle Events, securing a high-profile tech conference that restored Skylar's standing with wary clients. Her team buzzed with excitement, unaware of the source. But Skylar's sharp instincts caught a hint of Eli's handiwork when a client mentioned a generous backer. She frowned, torn between gratitude and unease. His actions spoke louder than his apologies, but they also threatened the independence she'd fought for. At a routine ultrasound appointment, Skylar hesitated, then texted Eli. 1 p.m., Mercy Hospital. You can come if you want. She regretted it instantly, her heart racing as she sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly. When Eli arrived, his tie loosened, his eyes bright with nervous hope. She felt a pang of something. Nostalgia, perhaps, for the man who'd once dreamed with her. The technician called them in, and as the monitor flickered to life, Noah's heartbeat filled the room, a rapid, steady rhythm. Eli's breath hitched, his hand hovering near hers before he pulled back. That's our son, he whispered, his voice thick. Skylar nodded, her throat tight. Our son, she echoed, her gaze fixed on the screen. The moment bound them, fragile and profound, but she steeled herself. This doesn't mean I've forgiven you, she said, her voice soft but firm. It's for Noah. I know, Eli said, his eyes still on the monitor, a tear escaping. I'm here for him, and for you if you ever want me to be. His restraint, his willingness to follow her lead, chipped at her resolve, but she held firm, leaving the appointment with a quiet goodbye. Across town, Amelia's frustration simmered in her penthouse, her plans unraveling. Skylar had ignored her anonymous threat, and Eli's growing distance, his late nights, his vague excuses, confirmed her fears. She'd hired a hacker to trawl Skylar's old emails, hoping for leverage, but found nothing damning. Her latest move, a second anonymous email to Skylar. Your past will ruin you. Step back from Eli, had gone unanswered, fueling her rage. Amelia paced, her heels clicking against marble, then froze as an idea struck. She'd confront Skylar directly, a calculated risk to break her rival's composure. The opportunity came at a charity auction Pinnacle Events managed, a glittering affair at the Drake Hotel. Skylar, radiant in a deep green gown, oversaw the event with her usual precision, though her pregnancy slowed her steps. Amelia arrived uninvited, her red dress a bold statement, her smile venomous. She cornered Skylar near a silent auction table, her voice low. You're persistent, Skylar, clinging to Eli like a leech. Back off, or I'll make sure everyone knows your little secret. Skylar's eyes blazed, her fatigue giving way to fury. You think you scare me? She said, stepping closer, her voice a controlled hiss. I've built my life from nothing, and I'm not afraid of your lies. Threaten my son again, and you'll regret it. She turned, resuming her work, leaving Amelia stunned, her confidence shaken. Eli, informed of the auction by his assistant, arrived late, catching the tail end of the exchange from across the room. Skylar's defiance, her unyielding strength, struck him anew. He approached her as Amelia retreated, his voice gentle. You okay? I saw her talking to you. Skylar exhaled, her composure fraying. She's desperate, she said, her eyes meeting his. But I can handle her. She paused, then added, You're making this complicated, Eli. Showing up, helping me. I don't know what to do with that. He handed her a small gift, a wooden rattle for Noah, simple but thoughtful. You don't have to do anything, he said. I'm here because I want to be. No strings. His sincerity, his quiet presence, stirred a warmth she fought to suppress. Later at home, Skylar placed the rattle on Noah's crib, her fingers lingering. Eli's actions, donations, gifts, his presence at the ultrasound, weren't the grand gestures of a billionaire, but the steady efforts of a man seeking redemption. She remembered their college days, Eli's clumsy attempts to cook her dinner, and their shared laughter. That man was still there, buried beneath the tycoon, and it terrified her how much she wanted to believe in him. Eli in his car replayed Skylar's words. I don't know what to do with that. It was a crack in her armor, a chance to prove himself. But Amelia's escalation worried him. His cybersecurity expert had traced the anonymous emails to a server linked to her assistant, evidence he was building for a reckoning. He wouldn't let her hurt Skylar again. Amelia, nursing a martini, seethed at Skylar's defiance. Her confrontation had backfired, exposing her desperation. She opened her laptop, drafting a new plan, a tabloid leak about Skylar's pregnancy, twisted to paint her as manipulative. She'd break Skylar's spirit no matter the cost. Skylar, gazing at Noah's ultrasound photo, felt a quiet resolve. Amelia's threats, Eli's persistence, the rumors, they were storms she'd weather. Noah was her anchor, her reason to stand tall. But as she drifted to sleep, Eli's face lingered in her mind, his voice a whisper of possibility. She wasn't ready to let him in, but the door was no longer locked, and that shift, subtle yet seismic, set the stage for a collision neither could avoid. Skylar's fleeting warmth, I don't know what to do with that, echoed in Eli's mind like a lifeline as he sat in his lawyer's mahogany-lined office. The Chicago skyline a muted gray through the window. Her defiance against Amelia at the auction had only deepened his resolve to protect her and their unborn son Noah. But the evidence piling up against his wife was a ticking bomb. Amelia's threats, her whispered venom, had crossed a line, and Eli was done playing defense. The folder before him, thick with damning proof, held the key to freeing Skylar from her shadow and himself from a marriage built on ambition, not love. He flipped through the documents, intercepted emails, server logs, and a paper trail linking Amelia's assistant to the anonymous threats and the smear campaign against Skylar. The blog post accusing Skylar of crashing their wedding was just the start. Amelia had planned a tabloid leak about Skylar's pregnancy, framing her as a gold digger. Eli's jaw clenched, fury simmering. He'd trusted Amelia's charm, her sharp mind, blind to the manipulation beneath. No more. He glanced at his watch. Time to end this. Across town, Skylar stood in her condo's nursery, painting a mural of stars on the wall, her ninth-month pregnancy slowing her movements. The room, soft with pastel blues and wooden accents, was Noah's sanctuary, a testament to her strength. Eli's rattle rested on the crib, a quiet reminder of his persistence. She hadn't seen him since the auction, but his absence felt heavy. His efforts, funding her projects, defending her name, chipping away at her resolve. She wanted to hate him, to guard her heart, but his sincerity was rewriting their story, and that terrified her. Her phone buzzed, a client canceling a meeting, citing reputational concerns. The rumors, though fading, still stung. Skylar exhaled, brushing paint from her hands. She'd fought too hard to let Amelia's lies unravel her. But the anonymous email from weeks ago lingered, a warning of worse to come. She pushed it aside, focusing on the mural, whispering to Noah, "We'll be okay, little man." Yet Eli's face, raw with regret at the ultrasound, haunted her. Could she let him in, just a little, for their son? Eli, meanwhile, orchestrated his plan with surgical precision. He invited Amelia and a handful of their mutual friends to dinner at their penthouse, a stage for her unmasking. The dining room gleamed with candlelight, the tension masked by clinking glasses. Amelia, in a crimson dress, laughed with a tech mogul, her poise impeccable. Eli watched, his smile tight, the folder hidden in his briefcase. As dessert was served, he stood, his voice calm but commanding. "I have something to share." The room quieted. Amelia's eyes narrowed, sensing a shift. Eli opened the folder, projecting emails onto a screen. "These are messages from Amelia's assistant, sent on her orders," he said, his tone ice cold. "Threats to Skylar West, my ex-wife. Lies spread to ruin her reputation. A tabloid deal to exploit her pregnancy." Gasps rippled through the guests. Amelia's face paled, her glass trembling. "Eli, this is absurd," she stammered. "You're mistaken." "Mistaken?" He slid a printed email across the table, her signature clear. "You deleted Skylar's messages to me during our divorce, hid her pregnancy, and tried to destroy her. You didn't just betray me, you targeted an innocent woman and my child." His voice broke, anger giving way to disgust. "We're done, Amelia. My lawyer's filing tomorrow." The guests murmured, some leaving in discomfort. Amelia stood, her composure crumbling. "You'll regret this," she hissed, storming out. Eli exhaled, the weight of his decision settling. He'd burned a bridge, but for Skylar, for Noah, it was worth it. That night, he posted a statement online, exposing Amelia's actions and praising Skylar's integrity. By morning, Chicago's elite had turned on Amelia, her social standing in ruins. Skylar woke to a flood of notifications, her phone buzzing with Eli's post. She read it, stunned, his public defense, his apology for the rumors, his vow to protect her. Her chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and fear. He wasn't just fighting for Noah. He was fighting for her, dismantling his own world to right his wrongs. She texted him, "Come over. We need to talk." Her heart raced as she sent it, unsure if she was ready for what came next. Eli arrived at her condo, his usual polish replaced by raw vulnerability. Skylar stood in the nursery, the mural half finished, her eyes wary but softer. "I saw what you did," she said, her voice steady. "Calling out Amelia, risking your reputation. Why?" "Because you don't deserve her lies," he said, stepping closer. "And because I've failed you enough. Noah deserves better. You deserve better." He gestured to the rattle. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, you Skylar. I'm asking for a chance to be part of his life. And yours, if you'll let me." She crossed her arms, her gaze searching his. "I'm not ready to trust you," she said, her voice trembling. "But Noah, he needs a father. We can start there, slowly." She led him to the crib, handing him a paintbrush. "Help me finish this. For him." Eli took the brush, his fingers brushing hers, a spark igniting. They painted in silence, the stars taking shape, a fragile truce forming. Skylar watched him, his careful strokes a mirror to the man she'd loved in college. earnest, devoted. Her heart ached, torn between fear and hope. "This doesn't mean we're okay," she said, breaking the quiet. "But it's something." He nodded, his smile tentative. "Something's enough." They worked side by side, the nursery a canvas for a future neither could predict. Skylar felt Noah kick, grounding her. She wasn't forgiving Eli, not yet, but she was letting him in, a crack in her armor that felt like freedom. Amelia, in her now empty penthouse, scrolled through social media, her name dragged through headlines, socialites scheme exposed. Her allies had vanished and her power crumbled. She hurled her phone against the wall, her scream echoing. Skylar had won, and Eli was lost to her. But her defeat was her own making, a truth she couldn't face. Skylar, stepping back to admire the mural, caught Eli's gaze, his eyes soft with wonder. "It's beautiful," he said, meaning more than the stars. She didn't reply, but her silence held possibility, a bridge between their past and a future unwritten. Noah's arrival loomed, and with it, a chance for Eli to prove he could stay, not just for their son, but for the woman he'd never stopped loving. The quiet promise of Skylar's. It's something lingered in Eli's heart like a fragile ember, warming him through the crisp Chicago dawn as he stood outside Mercy Hospital. The nursery's starlit mural, painted side by side, had sealed a tentative truce, a bridge to a future where Noah might bind them. Now, days later, Skylar's text, "It's time. Noah's coming," had sent him racing through the city, his pulse a frantic drumbeat. The hospital loomed, its glass facade reflecting a sky bruised with clouds, and Eli felt the weight of this moment, the birth of his son, the chance to prove he could be more than his past failures. Inside, Skylar lay in a delivery room, her face etched with exhaustion and determination. The labor had been grueling, a cesarean necessary, but Noah was here, a healthy 6-pound boy with a soft wail that pierced her heart. She cradled him, his tiny fingers curling around hers, and whispered, "We made it, little man." Her strength, forged through months of solitude, glowed in her eyes. But Eli's absence during labor stung, a reminder of her guarded trust. Yet she'd texted him, a choice she still questioned, her heart torn between independence and the pull of their shared history. Eli burst through the ward's doors, his tie askew, his breath ragged. A nurse led him to Skylar's room, and he stopped short, the sight stealing his words. Skylar, in a pale gown, held Noah, her face soft but wary. The baby, swaddled in blue, slept against her chest, his dark curls a mirror of hers. Eli's throat tightened, tears brimming. "Skylar," he managed, his voice hoarse. "He's perfect." She nodded, her gaze flickering to him. "He is," she said, her tone measured. She shifted Noah, gesturing. "Want to hold him?" Eli's eyes widened, fear and awe colliding. He nodded, stepping forward, his hands trembling as Skylar guided Noah into his arms. The baby's weight, so small yet monumental, grounded him. "Hey, Noah," he whispered, a tear falling. "I'm your dad." Skylar watched, her heart squeezing. Eli's tenderness, his raw vulnerability, echoed the man she'd loved in college, before ambition had stolen him. She wanted to guard herself, to keep Noah's world simple, but this moment, fragile and real, cracked her resolve. "Be gentle," she said, a half-smile breaking through. "You're new at this." Eli laughed softly, careful not to jostle Noah. "I'm learning," he said, meeting her eyes. "For him, for you." His sincerity, stripped of pretense, stirred her, but she held back, her voice firm. "This is for Noah, Eli. Don't read more into it." "I know," he said, his gaze steady, "but I'm here, Skylar, for as long as you'll let me." He handed Noah back, their fingers brushing, a spark she ignored. She settled Noah in her arms, the hospital's hum fading as she focused on her son, her anchor. Days later, Skylar returned to her condo, Noah's crib now filled with his soft breaths. She worked remotely, managing Pinnacle events with fierce efficiency, her team thriving under her leadership. Eli visited daily, his presence steady but respectful, bringing diapers, reading to Noah, learning to navigate fatherhood. Skylar watched him fumble with a bottle, his earnestness disarming. "You're getting better," she teased, and his grin, boyish and warm, tugged at her heart. Their routine evolved into a delicate dance of co-parenting. One Sunday, they took Noah to Grant Park, pushing his stroller under golden autumn leaves. The air was crisp, the city alive with joggers and laughter. Eli pointed to a tree. "That's where we got married," he said, his voice soft. Skylar glanced at him, memories flooding back. Their vows, her white dress, his promise of forever. "Yeah," she said, her tone guarded. "Another lifetime." He nodded, undeterred. "I messed that up," he said. "But I'm here now, Skylar. Not to fix the past, but to build something new. For Noah. Maybe for us, if you ever want it." His honesty, free of pressure, stirred her. She didn't respond. But as they walked, their shoulders brushing, she felt a flicker of possibility. At home, Skylar found a gift from Eli. A leather journal, its pages filled with notes he'd written during their divorce. Words he'd never sent. "I'm sorry I lost you. I'll spend my life making it right." She read, her throat tightening, then tucked it away, unready to face its weight. Noah's coup pulled her back, grounding her. She was enough for him, but Eli's quiet devotion was reshaping her world, and that scared her more than any threat. Eli, in his new apartment, stripped of the penthouse's excess, felt lighter. Amelia's fall, her name now a footnote in Chicago's gossip, had cleared the path. He'd finalized the divorce, his focus now on Noah and Skylar. He kept his distance when she needed it, but each visit, each shared laugh over Noah's tiny sneezes, wove them closer. He didn't push, but his heart held hope, a flame he nurtured in silence. One evening, Skylar invited him to stay for dinner, a simple pasta dish. They ate in the nursery, Noah sleeping nearby, the mural's stars glowing under a lamp. "You're good with him," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't expect that." Eli smiled, his eyes warm. "I didn't either. But he's everything, Skylar. So are you." She looked away, her heart racing, but didn't shut him down. The city stretched beyond her window, its lights a tapestry of stories. Skylar glanced at Eli, his focus on Noah, and felt the past loosen its grip. She wasn't ready to love him again, not yet, but the door was open, a sliver of light in her guarded heart. "We'll see where this goes," she said, almost to herself. Eli nodded, his smile tentative, a silent vow to stay. As they cleared the dishes, Noah stirred, his cry soft. Skylar lifted him, Eli close behind, their hands brushing as they soothed their son. The moment, ordinary yet profound, held a truth. They were a family, fractured but mending, bound by a love that refused to fade. Skylar met Eli's gaze, her smile faint but real, a promise of tomorrow, one she'd face on her terms, with Noah as her North Star, and Eli, perhaps, as her unexpected ally. As Skylar and Eli's story closes, their fragile truce blooms into a promise of healing, with Noah as their anchor. Will love rekindle, or will Skylar's strength keep them apart? Fate has woven their paths, but the future is theirs to shape. Thank you for joining this journey. Your support means the world. Drop a like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from, what time it is, and your guest for their next chapter. Will they find forever or just peace? Stay tuned for more stories that grip your heart. Keep shining, and we'll see you soon.